Ladies and gentlemen, dear members of the jury, colleagues, family and friends, welcome at the public defense of my PhD, entitled A Multimodal Approach to Audiovisual Text-to-Speech Synthesis. In the next 45 minutes, I will try to give you an idea about what I have been doing here at the VUB in the course of my PhD. Now, before I take off, I would like to give the word to a colleague of mine. It's a special colleague, and it's someone who became a very special person to me over these last years.
Dag iedereen, ik ben een virtuele medewerker hier op de universiteit. Welkom op Wesley zijn doctoraatsverdediging als u goed oplet. Dan weet u straks hoe het mogelijk is dat ik kan praten. Ik wens je veel plezier met de presentatie en misschien zien we elkaar een volgende keer weer.
Okay, I split my presentation in 5 different parts. After the introduction, I will talk about the proposed single-phase audiovisual speech synthesis technique. Then I will talk about an AAM-based synthesizer and about different speech labels you can use for visual speech synthesis. And of course, I will end by making some general conclusions. Let me start by making some observations. Now, the first observation is something we all know. The primary means of communication among humans is speech. And now, for those of you who are not familiar with speech processing, here I've plotted a waveform that represents an acoustic speech signal. I will play it for you. It's in Dutch.
Simulatie, het voorwenden van wat er in werkelijkheid niet is.
Now, and if you now zoom into the last part of this waveform, so the words niet is, you can see that this waveform is made up of consecutive speech sounds we call phones. So this is a phone, this is a phone, and this is a phone. And now each phone in a speech signal is in fact an instance of something more general we call a phoneme. So a phoneme is a general description of equivalent speech sounds. So the first phone is an instance of the phoneme E, the long E. The second one is an instance of the phoneme T, and so on. And now each spoken language defines a limited set of such phonemes. The second observation is the fact that speech is a truly audiovisual signal. You have an auditory speech signal, and this is just a sound wave that is produced by the human speech production system. Now, some of the articulators of this speech production system are visible to the outside, for instance, the lips. And now the variations of these visual articulators while uttering the speech sound, these variations describe a visual speech signal. Now you can wonder, is this multimodality not only a side effect? Do we really need these both speech modes? Well, think about something we all teach our children to do so. You look at the person that is speaking to you. So you do this in order to better understand what he is saying. Another example from real life is, imagine you have a discussion with somebody. And now imagine you have the discussion over the telephone. Well, over the telephone, the discussion much more easily results in a real fight in comparison when you have a discussion face to face, because when you're talking over the telephone, you're only getting the acoustic speech information. You're missing the visual speech information, so you're missing a lot of information about expressiveness and emotion in the speech. So this multimodality of speech is not only a side effect. We really need both modalities because this helps to focus our attention on the speaker. It also increases the intelligibility of the speech. In Nederlands, de verstaanbaarheid. It also increases the expressiveness of the speech, and more in general, it increases the confidence we have in the communication. And now, it has also been proven that our brain is programmed to decode auditory and visual speech information at the same time. So we really need these both speech modalities in the communication channel. For the third observation, I would like you to think about smartphones, about ticket vending machines, about information kiosks, and about smart fridges that tell us the cooking recipes or the weather forecast. Well, today we are surrounded by computer systems, and we interact countless times with such computer systems in common everyday situations. Now, of course, the ideal goal would be to have this interaction with these computer systems feel as natural and as familiar as the interaction with other humans, because then we will feel really confident in this communication because we will forget we're communicating with the computer system. So to sum things up, we know that speech is a primary means of communication among humans. We know that speech is a truly audiovisual signal, and we also want this interaction with computer systems to be as natural and as familiar as interaction with other humans. So I think we can conclude that the human-machine interaction should consist of audiovisual speech. Now, in order to make a computer system able to transmit a spoken message towards its users, we need something we call audiovisual speech synthesis. And the other way around, to make a computer system able to understand a spoken message uttered by its users, we need audiovisual speech recognition. And now my thesis focuses on the problem of audiovisual speech synthesis. Now, audiovisual speech synthesis, and more in detail, audiovisual text-to-speech synthesis, is the problem of you start with text information. This information you give as input to the AVTTS, the audiovisual text-to-speech synthesizer, and then the system has to generate a novel synthetic audiovisual speech signal containing the correct message. Now, once you have such an AVTTS synthesizer, many applications are thinkable. For instance, you could employ an AVTTS system in airports or in train stations to have an automatic generation of the announcements. And now when you would also display the synthetic visual speech mode on the information screens, this would really help to improve the intelligibility of the announcements because especially in train stations, there's a lot of background noise, so it's much harder to understand the acoustic speech information. There are also more entertainment applications possible. For instance, you can have this avatar application on your smartphone that reads your text messages, for instance. But also in the clinical world, there are some applications. For instance, you can use the system to automatically generate audiovisual speech samples that can be used, for instance, in speech therapy for pronunciation training, for instance. Okay, an AVTTS synthesizer has three main goals. It has to generate a high-quality auditory speech signal. It has to generate a high-quality visual speech signal. But it also has to ensure a high-quality audiovisual presentation of these both speech modes. And now the standard approach we find in the literature for AVTTS synthesis is in the first step to synthesize the auditory speech based on the input text using a separate auditory speech synthesizer. Okay, these systems, you can buy them online, you can buy them in the shop. These systems have developed to generate high quality auditory speech, so that's okay. Then the second step, the system generates the visual speech using a separate visual speech synthesizer. Okay, now these days visual speech synthesis, it's still only in research we find these systems, but still there have been reports about systems producing high quality visual speech, so that's okay. But then in the third step, the separately synthesized auditory speech signal and a separately synthesized visual speech signal, these signals are combined to create the audiovisual output. Now, by doing it this way, you can't ensure this high-quality audiovisual presentation of these two speech modes because they were generated separately, so you can't ensure this high audiovisual perception quality. So we propose, in my thesis, a single-phase synthesis approach. This means the system will simultaneously generate the auditory and the visual speech information. Yeah? And by doing it this way, you can ensure a maximal level of audiovisual coherence in the output speech. And once you have this maximal level of audiovisual coherence, you can ensure a high quality audiovisual presentation of the two speech modes. So the main research goals in my thesis were, in the first step, of course, to develop such a single-phase synthesis system, and then to pursue a high synthesis quality, because only then it will be possible to compare this single-phase synthesis approach with a more traditional multiple-phase approach. In the process of this, of course, it will be needed to evaluate the importance of the level of audiovisual coherence on the perceived speech quality. Now, this is an overview of our synthesizer. In the first step, the text input is given to something we call the high-level synthesis. And the high-level synthesis needs to translate the text information into a target speech description. And the first thing we need to know is which speech sounds do we need to create the message. For instance, when you have the text, "I like eating fish," you need to know, through a whole lot of steps, which sequence of phonemes that are needed to create the output speech. But that's not enough. You also need to know how does the output speech needs to be uttered. You need to know the prosody of the output speech. So you have this sequence of phonemes, but you have to know aspects like energy, timing, so the durations of each phoneme. You have to know about stress information, in Nederlands klemtoon. You have to know pitch information, in Nederlands toonhoogte. So you need to know all these things, and you need to know the target phoneme sequence to create the target speech. Another thing our synthesizer needs is an audiovisual speech database. This is an illustration of the recordings of such an audiovisual speech database we created here at the university. So an audiovisual speech database is just a consistent set of audiovisual recordings of original speech. So we have an original speaker uttering lots of sentences. We record her audiovisually, and then we store the acoustic speech information in separate WAV files, and we store the visual speech information in movie files. And our database is nothing more than just a collection of all these files corresponding to all these sentences. Okay, now once we have recorded this database, we need to know extra information about the recorded speech. For instance, we need to know in each speech signal, where are the consecutive phones. We also need to know acoustic features from the speech. For instance, we have to measure in each auditory speech signal where are the pitch periods that are caused by the vibrations of the vocal cords, the stembanden in Nederlands. We need to know the spectral information of the recorded acoustic speech, and so on. In addition, we need to derive visual features, such as we have to apply a landmarking strategy. So for each recorded video frame, we have to know the position of the head, of the mouth, of the teeth, of the eyes, and so on. We also have to measure for each recorded video frame, is the tongue visible? Are there teeth visible? Is the mouth open? Is the mouth closed? And so on. And once we have performed this high-level synthesis and we have this audiovisual speech database, we can proceed with the audiovisual unit selection synthesis. And this works like this. Imagine we have the text fish we want to synthesize. So we need the phonemes f, I, sh. Now we split this sequence of phonemes into a sequence of diphones. And diphones is just two consecutive phonemes. So we need diphones silence f, I, sh, and sh silence. And now for each of these target diphones, I'm going to look into my database and I will select one segment of original speech representing this diphone. And once I have selected for each target diphone one segment from the database, I'm going to partially overlap these selected segments and I will join them. And so as here indicated in green, I have enough original speech information to generate the output speech. Now the main question is, how do I select this optimal set of segments from the database? Well, this is based on a minimization of a total selection cost. And the selection cost itself is based on target cost values and join cost values. Imagine again the 4 target diphones to generate the word fish. Now for each target diphone, I've illustrated 4 candidates from the database. And each candidate from the database is just a segment from the database containing the same diphone information. Now for each candidate, you can calculate a target cost. And this is just a cost that expresses how well this candidate matches the target diphone. On the other hand, you can also calculate join cost values. And these express for each 2 candidates of 2 consecutive target diphones, how easy it will be to concatenate them. So how smooth the transition will be from the first candidate to the second. And now at the end, you select for each target diphone one segment from the database, and then the final collection of selected segments will then determine the minimal total target and total join cost. And now the novelty of our system is the way in which we select these segments from the database. Because imagine here I have my database with all these audiovisual recordings of all these sentences. Now each candidate I consider in my unit selection process is an original combination of auditory and visual speech information. And then the final step in my synthesis is the concatenation step, in which each selected candidate will be joined together. So imagine I have here two selected candidates. Well, I need to join the auditory speech information of these candidates and the visual speech information. So at the end, I get one concatenated signal in which, in the most ideal case, you do not notice anymore there exists a concatenation point. So summarize, how do I go from my database to my output speech? Well, to put it simple, I just reuse original speech information from the database that I put after each other. And because we select original combinations of auditory and visual speech information, in my output speech, I have a maximal level of audiovisual coherence, because in the output speech, I also have always this original combination of acoustic and visual speech information.